let's be honest, being tall as a guy is attractive. But what height do women find most attractive? You see, many studies show that the minimum threshold a man should be to be deemed as tall and attractive is 6 foot. But there's just one problem with this. Most of these studies pull data from dating apps, where women often use the height filter to set 6 foot as the minimum. Not because they can really tell the difference, but because 6 foot is a clean, rounded number that society now treats as the tall threshold. That's why the 1-inch difference between 5'11 and 6 foot is often joked about online. But before I tell you what the most attractive height is, studies show that most couples have a height gap of about 4 to 6 inches. This suggests that the minimum height threshold women are satisfied with isn't a fixed number, but more of a relative preference. And based on that range, even a difference as small as 4 inches may already be enough to meet that standard. In fact, one study that asked over 360 women which male-female height pairing they would prefer found that the most ideal height difference was when the man was around 9% taller, which works out to be roughly 4 to 6 inches. So if we apply this 4-inch difference globally, here's what the minimum ideal male height would look like in different parts of the world. Now, there are two things you need to keep in mind. First, 4 inches isn't a strict minimum. It's just the smallest height difference that's commonly seen in couples. Some women are still satisfied even when the height difference is smaller. But the second thing you need to remember is that just because a height falls past the ideal threshold doesn't necessarily mean it's considered attractive. So where does male height attractiveness actually peak? The truth is, if we exclude studies that use data from dating apps, research on this topic is quite limited. However, if the average height gap between couples is around 4 to 6 inches, then it's safe to say that anything above 6 inches is not only ideal, but also what starts to be considered attractive and rare. And from what we know, the sweet spot seems to be around an 8-inch height difference. It's enough to make the man clearly taller without the gap feeling too extreme or unrealistic. So if we apply this 8-inch difference globally, here's what the most attractive and ideal male height would look like in different parts of the world. Once the difference starts pushing past 10 inches, it's still considered attractive by some, but just not ideal. At that point, the height gap can feel unbalanced and unnatural. It might look impressive in photos or on social media, but in real life, it often feels a bit too much. Taller doesn't always mean better, and beyond a certain point, it can start to take away from the appeal. Of course, every woman has her own preference, and what feels ideal or attractive for one might not be the same for another. But this breakdown gives a rough idea of how different height gaps are generally seen. And if you want to know how attractive you really are, head over to rate.onlygrader.com, where we personally rate your face, height, and physique based on real standards.